So why do we have inflation? There are two types of inflation. They are demand pull and cost push, and it has to do with why we have inflation. So the first, we demand inflation. We like when numbers get bigger. So for example, when we look at games like basketball, we've actually changed how that game works in order to make it a higher scoring game. If you've ever played pinball, for example, they used to be that high scores were only a couple hundred, and now they're in the millions. Even video games, the numbers have increased. We like higher numbers, we like bigger scores. Same thing with grades, right? We see grade inflation. In 1890, the average GPA on a 4-point scale at Harvard was 2.27. All right, what do you think the average GPA at Harvard is today on a 4-point scale? The average GPA is now 3.48. Now, is that because the students are any smarter than they were over 100 years ago? No, it's just that we expect higher grades. We like bigger numbers. And so that expectation of bigger numbers has permeated our society in terms of higher grades, higher income, right? We demand a raise. We want to feel like we're making more money. In our sports, in our video games, we like bigger numbers. So we demand to see the numbers go up. And so one of the sources of inflation is what is called demand pull inflation. Okay? We want higher prices, and it comes from the fact that we are demanding more of something. When there is more, when we demand more of a good, okay, so if there's an increase in demand, more of us want something, then at the current price, the quantity demanded, that is the amount that consumers want to buy, is more than quantity supply, the amount businesses want to sell. And so this creates a shortage and drives up the price. Now, in previous levels, we've been looking at the demand for a particular product and the supply of a particular product. In macroeconomics, and from here on out, we're looking at the demand for all goods, and so we're simply going to look at the aggregate demand and the aggregate supply, so the total demand for all products and the total supply of all products. So demand pull is inflation that is caused by an increase in demand for our goods and services. We also have cost push inflation. And cost push inflation is inflation that is caused by a change in supply. So when one of the costs of production increase, then at the current price, the amount that we are willing and able to sell is not the same. If it's costing us more to make it, then we want to sell it for a higher price if we're going to sell the same quantity, or we are going to sell less at the current price. And so there's a decrease in the aggregate supply. Now, since we are looking at demand and supply for lots of goods and services, we can't just use price on our graphs. We technically need to use CPI or some other price index to measure that level of prices. Well, if costs are increasing, supply is decreasing, that means at the current price levels, the amount that we're willing to sell is less than the amount people are willing to buy, and that shortage drives up the price. So what are these costs that could be driving up the price? Well, the first is a wage push. So in this case, what we have is that we have workers who want a higher wage. Well, if wages increase, then it costs the business more to make the same amount of goods. And so in this case, aggregate supply decreases, and that causes our price levels to go up. The second cost push inflation is profit push. So let's say that we have companies that are oligopolies. That is, there's only a handful of competitors. Or we have industries where we have a monopoly. There's only one company that makes that good or service. In which case, they have more market power over price. And if they decide they want to increase their profit margin, they can do so. So if this is a particular company, you can decrease the supply of your good on the market. That creates this shortage and drives up the price. So when companies have more market power because there's less competition, their drive for more profit can create inflation. The third source of inflation is what is called import push. And this primarily looks at things like oil, where it's on the global market and we import it, and it impacts the cost to make other things. So for example, if oil prices go up, then it now costs the business more to run because we're paying more to transport our goods. Maybe we make something that uses oil, like we make plastics, we make tires, then it's costing us more. And so again, as a business, it's going to cost us more to make our goods, so our supply decreases, and that drives up the price. If that's true for lots of companies in our economy, then we're looking at aggregate demand and aggregate supply, and we're looking at countrywide increases in price, or we're looking at inflation. So that's why oil creates this import push, because everything that we buy gets transported, right? And oil is used in so many of the things that we use, and so it can cause nationwide price increases or cause inflation. So we get inflation because of an increase in demand, so demand is pulling up the prices, or we get inflation from a cost push, decreasing supply and driving up the prices.